Hello there. My name is Roger Q. Mason. I am the writer and performer of Me and Her Against the World, being featured in Together LA 2020. And if you are excited to learn more about my play and this piece, go ahead and watch this video because, honey, you know I let you have it. I fell in love with theater, I think, when I came out of the womb because that was all I ever knew. You know, as a young kid, my grandmother would have me recite a lot of poems, particularly by Black poets, when I was growing up, around a yellow formica table, very similar to the one that's described in Her and Me Against the World, the play that's being presented for Together LA. And so performance and the idea of embodying language was always a part of my upbringing. I would say I probably learned how to speak through, these early poetry recitations. And then I was always going to shows. My family always went to the theater. And so I got to see a lot of shows in Los Angeles at Center Theater Group and a lot of other venues. And so it just became a part of who I was. So when I went to undergrad at Princeton, and I found this community of people that simultaneously loved language and also appreciated the power of performance and embodiment, I sort of just went into the field, and I haven't looked back since. Well, I knew that I had to be a writer when I started writing these little, I guess you would call them like character sketches. I was a very strange child in the sense that I enjoyed observing people and taking a little notepad with me and writing these little character observations and stories about what I thought their relationships were based on their physical behavior and their interaction with each other. I cared not what they said. And that still is true today. I'm much more interested in physical action as a great indicator of character. And I still think that language is the last part of the artistic expression. I think if you lead with language, you're cheating the audience out of the rest of the instrument of the actor. And your next part of your question was when it became an obsession. You know, I don't know if it's an obsession so much as it's just a way of life, and it's a way of making meaning in the world. I understand the world when I process it through writing and developing plays, because the work that I do is aimed at asking the questions about human nature and the human condition that I want to understand more about. And I explore my versions of an answer through writing and developing plays. The way I develop plays is very collaborative. I started out as a performer, and so my instinct is to always write with an ear and an eye towards performance. I also direct and produce for theater in addition to write. So my understanding of how to develop work is a very holistic expression. So when I'm writing a play from concept to the first draft, I have a lot of conversations with directors that I'm very close with who help me sort of talk through or work through how to take something from theory to practice. And then I develop sort of a way into the piece. You know, I call it something I can believe in. Once I find something I can believe in, whether it's a character or a particular scene that gets me into the piece, or maybe a piece of music that's guiding me emotionally, then I start and I just go and I make a very quick skeletal draft. And usually that draft earmarks, it's essentially an outline, but it's manifested as a draft of the play. It's very skeletal and somewhat surgical in its, and in its purpose. It doesn't have that blood and sinew and phlegm and sweat yet. Then I go back and I start breathing some humanity into the piece. What are these bodies doing? And around that time, I like to bring actors into the room because I think we're writing a blueprint for actors. So why not bring them in and see what they can teach you? I shy away from what I call speculative writing, writing in some sort of vacuum as the singular author. I think that what we're doing is we're vessels and we're here to receive. And so pretty early on, I bring actors in, and then, the rest is sort of a whole lot of rewrites and discoveries and things learned from designers and directors and other collaborators. I was invited to join the writers group of the Skylight Theater. It was called Play Lab at one time, and I think now their name is Skylab, so that it's more in tone with the name of the theater. I was invited to join the group about 3 years ago. And at that time, Jonathan Munoz-Prue, a very dear friend of mine and collaborator, was interested in making sure that LA voices, particularly voices of color, had an artistic home. And so he was sort of letting us know about different opportunities around town, including Skylights. And, a couple of my friends were in the group, including Jonathan Ceniceros and Bonnie Alvarez. And I really felt like I had a creative home and like I was amongst colleagues, but also I was amongst heroes, because these were folks that in the last, 5 or 6 years before that, I had watched them as the young, emerging supplicant playwright, dreaming of finer and larger things for myself. And so now I was in the room with those people, and I knew I just had to be there. It's important to have more voices in the theater because we have to stay true to its name. I often tell this story in various thought leadership written pieces and blogs, and also in interviews. Theater as a word comes from the Greek word theatron, which loosely is translated as the seeing place. So it's a reflection of us. And I think if theater is going to be true to its name and authentic to its etymological origins, it has to reflect the people that are in the world that it's serving and representing. So I think we live in a very diverse world. And the theater, I believe, has a moral and civic obligation to investigate the lived experiences of the people that exist in the world it's here to represent. We have a right to see ourselves in the theater, and it is the obligation of the theater as an institution to make space for that diversity of voices. Me and Her Against the World is part of a larger piece that's called the Duat, which is a solo show. I call it a fire dance because it's a piece for a single Black male actor that is underscored by this African drum sound, in which this character is having his soul judged in the Egyptian afterlife. And he was a former COINTELPRO informant during the Black Power movement. So there are questions of, is there a monolithic definition of Blackness? What obligations does an individual owe to a community? How does one find memory and meaning in the world? How does one find love and belonging? And how does one wrestle with the memory not only of their own trauma, but of familial intergenerational trauma? So some of the earlier segments in that piece are this character's relationship with his father and his mother and his grandmother. And I wrote this play in a time when I was doing a lot of what I call poetic expressionism. I was coming out of a period where I was doing sort of early historical revisionist work, what I call historical fantasia work, exemplified by a play of mine called Onion Creek. And I was really trying to find my unapologetic voice. And I came upon a play that I wrote, it came to me, called Booth, which was the last evening of John Wilkes Booth's life before his demise in Virginia. And I wrote it, it was sort of like a monologue rant. and there was just a freedom and a lack of apology and a pride in who I was and how I sounded on the page as a playwright. And so I started writing a series of these, and the next one in that series was the Duat, from which Me and Her Against the World is derived. And it was a vital exercise for me because it was me fighting and digging to find my authentic voice as a writer. So after this segment of the play in which the character sort of recounts his early relationship with his grandmother, we then go into the time that he is a college student and is seduced by certain intelligence and counterintelligence forces within LA, sort of law enforcement of the 60s, to cause rifts between different Black student union groups at UCLA in the 60s. And this is based on an actual shooting that took place in Campbell Hall on the campus of UCLA during the civil rights and the later Black Power movement. And so the piece follows pretty closely that history. And then it ends with him having to reckon with Osiris, the Egyptian god of the underworld, and come to some healing about who he is and why he did these things and what he was really looking for, which was just a place to belong. What I want the audience to get out of this play is a more complicated understanding of Black history, a more multivalent vision of the Black Power movement. It gets very much demonized in history and in cultural memory, but there were a lot of things that were going on in that period within those organizations about cultural uplift and after-school enrichment and a sense of civic and religious autonomy and pride that were systemically stolen from Black people and Black bodies and Black minds over generations. And one of the goals of the Black Power movement was to help Black people find their own majesty again and to find their own regality. We are somebody. The idea that we have a place, that we have worth, that we have value, and the fact that that we exist in a society where people have to somehow remind themselves of that, I think is really the root problem that we're still dealing with today, which is that there's so much division in the world around the idea of human life and human value. So these are some of the things that some of the questions that I want people to come away from that piece asking. The Together LA is a beautiful expression of not only the individual gifts of these theater companies that are presenting work, but it's also a gorgeous portrait of the richness and the talent that Los Angeles theater has to offer, not only to our city, but to the country and the world. Los Angeles has a wealth of writers, directors, producers, creatives of various disciplines who are making work and innovating culture every single day. And I think it's so important for us to know the wealth and the richness of our own artistic capital, and also to be able to present that to the world. And I think because this is a digital programming, the forum is worldwide, and now Los Angeles is on a global stage in a way that I believe the city deserves. Los Angeles, the city of my birth, the city from which my stories are derived, my constant inspiration. Me and Her Against the World is a vital part of Together LA because it's our story. It's a story that takes place in Los Angeles. It's a story that is about us, and it's a story that reflects one family's vision of LA, both past, present, and hopefully future, that I am excited to share with audiences. And also, I have to say, I had a lot of fun playing this grandmother because she is crazy, and I can't wait for you all to see her. that grandmama is a mess in the best way, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So hope you guys get to see it. Skylight Theater plays a really important role in the development of new plays and new dramaturgical ideas, not only in Los Angeles, but around the country, because so many writers are moving to Los Angeles to do television and film, and they're looking for artistic homes for their theater work. And so, a theater that specializes in nurturing playwrights and new plays is actually a really vital part of any playwright's development and professional career. To have an artistic home where you can feel free and supported to make your best work is perhaps the most important thing a playwright can have. So, for that reason, I think it's an important institution for playwrights. The city needs to get behind it because I really think that like New York, we have the opportunity to really create a vibrant cultural and financial institution out of continuing to support the arts, including the theater in Los Angeles. I really do think there are audiences that want to see this work. I think there are playwrights with voices and stories worthy of being heard. And I think a theater like Skylight is exciting because you get to see plays that are in their emerging at stages, and you as an audience are playing an important role in defining how that play will continue, because we live for an applause, honey. Don't just think the actors love the applause. The playwrights love it too. And if you love what we're doing, we keep doing it. you know. My name is Roger Q. Mason. I am a writer performer. I do hope you enjoyed this interview. And if you did, I would love it if you would support Together LA and go to the website Together LA and support not only my piece, but also the work by so many writers, directors, and performers around Los Angeles who are excited to be sharing their artistry and their ideas with all of you.